Have you ever experienced the unsettling sensation that life might be nothing more than a dream? That the challenges you face, the desires that drive you, and even the very sense of who you are may not be as real as they seem? Imagine if I told you that the Buddha, centuries ago, uncovered a profound truth about the nature of reality, one that even modern science, particularly quantum physics, is still grappling to understand. In today's exploration, we will delve into the profound teachings of the Buddha, who revealed that what we perceive as reality is in fact an illusion. This notion might sound startling at first, but upon closer examination, it holds transformative potential for how we view the world and our lives within it. The Buddha's insight into the nature of existence is deeply rooted in the concept of impermanence, or anicca. According to this teaching, all things are transient, constantly changing, and lacking in any permanent essence. Everything we encounter, our thoughts, our emotions, even the material world, arises, exists, and fades away in an endless cycle. This understanding challenges the conventional belief that our world is solid, stable, and permanent. But why would the Buddha describe the world as an illusion? His teachings suggest that our attachment to these impermanent things, our identities, possessions, and desires, leads to suffering. We cling to these fleeting experiences as though they are lasting and unchanging, only to face disappointment when they inevitably dissolve. This attachment blinds us to the true nature of reality, which is fluid, interconnected, and ever-changing. Modern physics, particularly quantum mechanics, offers a fascinating parallel to the Buddha's teachings. In quantum physics, particles are not fixed entities, but exist in a state of probability, constantly shifting and evolving. The very fabric of reality, it seems, is not as solid and predictable as our senses lead us to believe. Just like the Buddha's vision of the impermanent world, quantum theory shows us that what we consider real is far more complex and elusive than we can comprehend. Now, this is where the teachings of the Buddha become even more significant. The realization that reality is impermanent and illusory is not meant to leave us in despair. Rather, it offers a liberating perspective. When we understand the transient nature of all things, we can learn to let go of our attachments, which in turn frees us from suffering. The Buddha's path is one of mindfulness and wisdom, teaching us to observe the world without clinging to it, allowing us to experience life with greater clarity and peace. What does this mean for your life? The key is to recognize that the way we perceive the world is often shaped by our desires, fears, and attachments. By cultivating a deeper understanding of the impermanence of all things, we can begin to shift our perspective. Rather than chasing after fleeting desires or holding tightly to our identities, we can embrace the fluid nature of life. This approach allows us to navigate the world with greater ease, letting go of unnecessary stress and embracing the present moment. The Buddha's teachings offer a profound blueprint for living a life free from the constraints of attachment and illusion. By understanding that the reality we cling to is not as fixed as it seems, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of freedom, insight, and peace. As science continues to explore the mysteries of the universe, we may find that the wisdom of the Buddha, ancient yet timeless, offers insights that resonate just as deeply in the modern world. In the end, the Buddha's message is not just about understanding the nature of reality, but about how we live in harmony with it. Through mindfulness and wisdom, we can transcend the illusions that bind us, experiencing life in its fullest, most authentic form. So the next time you question the nature of your reality, remember that the truth may be far more fluid and transformative than you ever imagined. The world we experience through our senses often feels solid, fixed, and undeniably real. We can touch, see, hear, and interact with the world around us, and it all seems tangible. Yet, the Buddha's teachings invite us to look deeper, revealing that what we perceive as reality is far more complex than it appears. According to the Buddha, reality is not just a single layer, but rather consists of three distinct realms: each of which offers a different perspective on the nature of existence. The first realm is the physical world, the world that our senses can access. This includes everything from mountains and rivers to stars in the sky. It is the domain of science, where we study the physical properties of matter and energy. It's the world we can touch, see, and measure. To most of us, this world is the most obvious, as it is where we spend much of our time. We interact with objects, people, and environments that seem fixed and stable. But the Buddha also spoke of a second realm, the mental world, the realm of thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. This is the world of our inner experiences, the thoughts we think and the feelings we feel. It's where our mind constantly churns with desires, fears, judgments, and perceptions. This mental landscape is incredibly influential, as it shapes the way we interpret the physical world. But here's where the Buddha's teachings begin to challenge our conventional understanding of reality. Our minds often deceive us. We become attached to our thoughts and emotions, believing them to be the definitive truths about ourselves and the world. We forget that thoughts and feelings are just passing phenomena, constantly shifting and impermanent. They are not reality itself, but our perceptions of it. The third realm, however, is where the Buddha's teachings take us beyond the confines of both the physical and mental worlds. This is the realm of ultimate reality, the true nature of existence that transcends thoughts, emotions, and forms. This level of reality is beyond the reach of our ordinary minds and senses. It is a state of pure awareness, where there are no distinctions between self and other, subject and object, observer and observed. In this state, the Buddha teaches there is no attachment, no craving, and no suffering. Ultimate reality is the realm of true liberation, the state where one can experience life without the distortion of the ego or mental constructs. It is here that one finds peace, freedom, and enlightenment. The problem, however, is that most of us are trapped in the mental world, where we confuse our thoughts and emotions for reality itself. We mistake fleeting feelings and mental patterns for the truth of who we are, and we become ensnared by them. We cling to thoughts of the past and future, often getting lost in worries, desires, and judgments. This attachment to the mental world creates a false sense of reality that keeps us stuck in a cycle of suffering. We suffer because we misinterpret the impermanent nature of our thoughts and emotions as something permanent and unchanging. The Buddha's teachings offer a path to freedom, but this path requires us to look beyond our mental world and into the deeper, more profound truth of ultimate reality. To break free from the cycle of suffering, we must cultivate mindfulness and awareness, qualities that allow us to see through the illusion of the mental world and recognize that our thoughts and emotions are not who we truly are. By understanding the impermanent nature of all things, we begin to let go of our attachments and find peace in the present moment. True liberation comes when we realize that the solid, unchanging world we thought we knew is just an illusion, and that reality is far more fluid, interconnected, and profound than we can imagine. In the end, the Buddha's teachings guide us toward a deeper understanding of our place in the world, urging us to see beyond the limitations of the physical and mental worlds and into the vast, boundless nature of ultimate reality. Only by recognizing the illusion of our thoughts and emotions can we transcend suffering and experience the true freedom that lies beyond all concepts and forms. This path leads us to liberation, peace, and enlightenment, the highest goal of the Buddhist journey. For centuries, science held the belief that the universe existed independently of us. The world, as we understood it, was a fixed and objective reality, unaffected by our presence or perception. We were mere observers of a universe that existed in its own right, regardless of how we saw or experienced it. However, with the advent of quantum physics, this long-standing assumption was upended. Scientists made a revolutionary discovery. Reality is not fixed. Instead, it is deeply influenced by how we observe it. The way we perceive something can actually alter its very nature, a concept that challenges our fundamental understanding of the universe. This might sound startling, but when you reflect on it, it's quite profound. The idea that the act of observation itself can change the thing being observed is a concept that seems both mystical and scientific. In essence, our perception is not just a passive reflection of the world, it is actively shaping the world around us. What we see, hear, and experience is not a solid, unchanging reality, but a fluid and dynamic process that is influenced by our senses, thoughts, and awareness. This idea is at the heart of quantum physics, where particles exist in a state of potential until they are measured or observed, at which point they collapse into a definite state. This breakthrough in physics reveals a deeper truth about the nature of reality. It is not fixed or independent, but interdependent on the observer. Surprisingly, the Buddha reached a similar conclusion over 2,500 years ago, long before modern science ever explored the mysteries of quantum mechanics. The Buddha, through his profound insight into the nature of existence, recognized that reality does not exist separately from our perception. Rather, it arises in a continuous interaction between our senses and the world. According to the Buddha, we do not experience a static, unchanging reality. Instead, we are constantly creating and experiencing our own versions of reality, shaped by our perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. This understanding is captured in the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, the idea that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other conditions. Nothing exists in isolation, and the way we experience the world is always interconnected with our state of mind and our awareness. The Buddha taught that our suffering arises because we cling to the belief that reality is fixed and independent. We attach ourselves to ideas, identities, and experiences, thinking they are permanent and unchanging. This attachment leads to dissatisfaction, as the world is always in flux and nothing lasts forever. Our perceptions, based on this attachment, distort our understanding of reality, causing us to suffer. If we can understand that reality is not an objective, static truth, but rather a fluid and ever-changing process shaped by our perceptions, we can begin to free ourselves from suffering. Just like quantum physics, which reveals that observation shapes reality, the Buddha's teachings show us that our mental states and perceptions are not passive. They actively shape the reality we experience. By cultivating mindfulness and awareness, we can begin to see beyond the illusions created by our senses and attachments. Through meditation and insight, we can break free from the cycle of suffering and experience a deeper understanding of the true nature of existence. The Buddha's wisdom, much like the discoveries of quantum physics, offers a path to liberation, showing us that reality is not as fixed and separate as we once thought, but is instead an interconnected, ever-changing process that arises with our awareness. Ultimately, the Buddha's teachings and modern quantum physics point to the same profound truth. Reality is not a fixed, independent entity, but something that arises in interaction with our perception and consciousness. By understanding this truth, we can transform the way we experience the world, freeing ourselves from the illusions that bind us and embracing a deeper, more liberated view of reality. This insight, whether from ancient wisdom or modern science, holds the key to a life of greater peace, clarity, and freedom. Now, things take a turn that might feel even more mind-bending. Throughout history, many spiritual traditions have discussed the concept of the self, the soul, the consciousness that makes you who you are, the essence that defines your individuality. These traditions often emphasize that there is an eternal, unchanging core within each of us. But the Buddha's teachings take us in a completely different direction. In his profound insight, the Buddha made a striking claim: there is no self. This idea is encapsulated in the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or non-self. According to the Buddha, the notion of a permanent, unchanging self is an illusion. When we look deeply into the nature of our thoughts, emotions, and experiences, we see that they are not fixed or stable. Instead, they arise and dissolve in a continuous flow, much like waves on the surface of the ocean. The idea of a fixed self is just a mental construct, a collection of patterns and sensations that appear and disappear with time. There is no permanent you at the core of your being. just ever-changing phenomena that we mistake for something solid and enduring. This realization is profound. The Buddha encouraged us to explore what remains when the mind is quiet, when thoughts subside, and the constant chatter of the ego fades away. What is left in that stillness? According to the Buddha, in the complete cessation of thought and mental activity, there is nothing, a profound emptiness. And yet, paradoxically, in that nothingness, we discover a deeper truth. In the absence of the self, we become everything. This emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a boundless space where true freedom and interconnectedness exist. It's like the wave that, upon reaching the shore, realizes it is not separate from the ocean. The wave has no inherent separate existence. It is part of the vastness of the sea, arising from it and dissolving back into it. In the same way, we are not separate from the greater whole of existence. The sense of I or me is simply a temporary pattern, a fleeting phenomenon that comes and goes. Once we see through this illusion of separateness, we awaken to a deeper understanding of our interconnectedness with all beings and with the universe itself. This teaching of anatta is not just a philosophical idea, it is a practical tool for liberation. By realizing that the self we cling to is a mere illusion, we can free ourselves from the suffering that arises from attachment to our identities, our desires, and our fears. When we let go of the notion of a fixed self, we open ourselves to the flow of life as it truly is, constantly changing, interconnected, and free from the constraints of ego. The Buddha's insight into anatta reveals that the key to true freedom lies in letting go of the illusion of self. When we no longer identify with the ever-changing patterns of thought, emotion, and identity, we experience a profound shift in consciousness. We realize that our true nature is not something separate, something fixed, but something vast and interconnected. In that recognition, we experience peace and freedom, and we awaken to the present moment, unburdened by the weight of the ego. In the end, the Buddha's teaching of non-self is an invitation to let go of the illusion of a separate, permanent identity. It calls us to explore the depths of our consciousness, to witness the impermanence of our thoughts and feelings, and to realize that in the absence of the self, we are one with all things. This awakening leads to liberation, peace, and an unfathomable sense of interconnectedness with the world around us. It is only by seeing through the illusion of the self that we truly awaken to the boundless nature of reality, and in doing so, experience the deepest freedom and understanding of who we really are. We often assume that reality exists independently of us, a fixed world out there that we merely observe. Yet, upon closer examination, everything we know, everything we experience, is nothing more than sensation, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and even thought. These are not direct encounters with an external world, but perceptions arising in the mind, shaped by conditions, expectations, and interpretation. Consider this simple yet profound example. Imagine holding an ice cube in your hand. You feel its sharp coldness, an undeniable sensation. But where exactly is the cold? Is it in the ice itself? Is it in your hand? Or is it merely a perception generated by your mind in response to contact? Without the hand to feel it, would coldness exist? If someone else held the same ice cube, would they feel the exact same sensation? This reveals an important truth. Coldness is not an absolute property of the ice. It arises from the interplay between the ice, the hand, and the mind that perceives it. This insight was central to the Buddha's realization. He saw that nothing possesses an independent, intrinsic existence. Instead, all things arise due to causes and conditions, appearing temporarily, only to change and disappear. The world we take as solid and permanent is, in truth, a vast web of interdependent events, momentary, ever-changing, and ultimately empty of a fixed, separate self. Buddhism teaches that our suffering arises from our attachment to things as though they were fixed and unchanging. We grasp at pleasure, fearing its loss. We cling to identity, unaware that we too are ever-shifting streams of experience. Yet, just as ice melts in the warmth of our palm, so too does our illusion of permanence dissolve when we truly observe reality as it is. To see the world clearly is to awaken from the dream of separateness. When we let go of rigid concepts and fixed identities, we open ourselves to the fluid nature of existence. This does not mean that nothing matters, but rather that everything is interconnected, arising and passing like ripples on the surface of a vast ocean. With this understanding, we cultivate wisdom, compassion, and a profound sense of peace. So, the next time you hold something in your hand, whether an ice cube, a flower, or the hand of a loved one, remember, what you experience is not a thing in itself, but the result of causes, conditions, and perception. Reality is not something external to us. It is an unfolding process, deeply intertwined with our awareness. To recognize this is to step closer to liberation, to see the world as the Buddha saw it, not as a collection of fixed entities, but as a dance of impermanence, emptiness, and interdependence. If reality is nothing more than sensation, then why do we suffer? The answer is simple. Because we cling. We grasp at pleasure, fearing its loss. We resist pain, wishing it away. We believe these experiences to be real, solid, and lasting, but they are not. The Buddha taught that pain and pleasure, like clouds drifting across the sky, are impermanent. They arise and pass away, independent of our desires. Yet we chase after fleeting joys and flee from discomfort, convinced that happiness lies in controlling these shifting experiences. But what if the way out of suffering is not through control, but through understanding? Imagine a wave in the ocean. It rises and falls, appearing distinct, yet inseparable from the sea. If the wave believed itself to be separate, it might fear its disappearance. But when it understands its true nature, fear vanishes. In the same way, our suffering comes from the illusion of separateness, believing that our thoughts, emotions, and identities are fixed, independent realities rather than transient, ever-changing phenomena. The mind clings to the idea of self, but what is this self? Is it your body, your thoughts, your emotions? Each of these constantly changes, so how can any of them be a fixed identity? When we observe closely, we see that our experiences are not possessions, nor do they define us. They arise, they change, they fade away, just like clouds in the sky. This is the wisdom of Buddhism. Suffering is not an unavoidable part of life, but a result of attachment. When we stop chasing and resisting, when we allow life to flow as it is, we find peace. This does not mean passivity or indifference. It means seeing reality clearly. It means responding to life with wisdom rather than reaction. It means understanding that neither pain nor pleasure can define us, and that freedom comes not from grasping at what is temporary, but from realizing our true nature, open, spacious, and unattached. Just as a mirror reflects whatever appears without clinging to the image, we too can learn to experience life fully without being bound by it. The moment we stop identifying with our passing sensations, we stop being controlled by them, and in that freedom, we find the end of suffering. If our suffering comes from illusion, then how do we wake up? The Buddha did not leave us with abstract theories. He offered a clear, practical path to awakening. The way out is not through blind faith or intellectual understanding, but through direct experience. 1. Observe your thoughts, but do not believe them. The mind is like a river, constantly flowing with thoughts, some pleasant, some disturbing, some mundane. But are these thoughts truly you? Just because a thought arises does not mean it is real or worth holding on to. Most of our suffering comes from believing in thoughts that are mere fabrications, conditioned by past experiences, fears, and desires. Instead of getting lost in them, watch them come and go like ripples on the surface of a lake. 2. Pay attention to sensations without reacting. We often assume that pleasure is good and pain is bad, leading us to chase one and resist the other. But the Buddha taught that all sensations, whether pleasurable or painful, are temporary. They appear, linger for a moment, and disappear. When we learn to observe them with equanimity, rather than reacting with craving or aversion, we break free from their control. This is the heart of mindfulness, simply being aware of what arises without clinging or pushing away. 3. Stop identifying with emotions. They are like passing clouds. We say, "I am angry," or "I am sad," as if these emotions define who we are. But emotions, like the weather, are constantly changing. Just as the sky remains untouched by the storms that pass through it, our true nature is not bound by emotions. When we stop identifying with them, we realize that we are not sadness, not anger, not fear. These are just passing visitors in the vast space of awareness. 4. Meditate, not to control the mind, but to see through it. Many people misunderstand meditation as an effort to stop thoughts or force the mind into silence. But meditation is not about control. It is about insight. When we sit in stillness and observe the mind, we begin to see its patterns, its illusions, its endless grasping. We see that we are not the thoughts, emotions, or sensations that arise. We are the awareness that watches them. This realization is the key to freedom. Most people never wake up because they are too busy chasing happiness outside of themselves, seeking fulfillment in possessions, relationships, status, or distractions. But true peace is not found in external things. It arises from within, when we stop looking outward for answers and start turning inward with clarity and awareness. The Buddha's path is not one of blind belief, but of direct experience. The truth is not something we have to invent. It is already here, waiting to be seen. To wake up is not to become something new, but to realize what we have always been, free, boundless, and untouched by the illusions of the mind. At this point, you might be wondering, so what is real? This question has puzzled humanity for centuries. We seek definitive answers, something solid to grasp, a final truth to hold on to. But the Buddha did not offer one. He did not hand down rigid dogmas or absolute conclusions. Instead, he gave a simple but profound challenge. See for yourself. Do not accept anything blindly, not even his words. Do not believe simply because a teacher, a book, or a tradition tells you something is true. Truth is not something that can be given. It must be discovered through direct experience. The Buddha's path is not about accepting beliefs, but about testing reality with your own mind. So here is my challenge to you. Take just 5 minutes today. Find a quiet space. Close your eyes. Let go of distractions. Observe your thoughts as they arise and pass, like clouds drifting in an open sky. And then ask yourself, who is watching these thoughts? Who am I? Do not rush to answer. Do not look for words or concepts to grasp. Simply observe. If you stay with this question long enough, something remarkable may happen. You might begin to sense that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your identity. You are the awareness behind them, the vast, open space in which everything appears and disappears. This simple realization could be the first step toward waking up from the illusions that bind us. The journey of awakening is not about acquiring new knowledge. It is about peeling away layers of illusion to see reality as it truly is. The Buddha did not give answers. He gave a path, and the first step is yours to take. So, if this resonates with you, if it sparks even a small question in your mind, then keep exploring, keep looking inward, because this is only the beginning. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe, because we are only scratching the surface. The path to awakening is vast, and we are just getting started.